Hi guys, it's Mike Demick again, and I'm here with the CMBA's Technology in Mortgage Banking Committee. I'm happy to present our second video in our Best Practices series. This video is focused on the 2018 HMDA changes. These changes were the most significant changes to the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act since its creation in 1975 and its subsequent implementation. As in our last video, Diva Varela will be posing questions to the other committee members regarding topics such as common HMDA errors, middleware utilization, operational best practices, and LOS issues. We hope you benefit from this experience as much as we did.
So Brian, when did you start collecting 2018 HMDA data?
So our plan was to start in September of 2017. However, the version of the software for our loan origination system that we needed was ready, but we had other issues with parts of that, version, non-HMDA related issues. So it took us another month to get those issues resolved. So we didn't start collecting till October 26th. So we that was late for us. So the only negative result was that we had loans with app dates prior to October 26th that we had to backfill when they closed after January 1st, but it was no big deal. We wrote a script and took care of it.
What could your LOS vendor have done better?
Our LOS vendor did a great job with this release. It has a great 2018 HMDA screen. It integrated the 1003 with the refinance questions and the demographic. We're very, very happy with that. What they could have done better is they could have isolated the HMDA changes, kept it out of the regular versions of the software, so we could have installed it whenever we wanted.
Sam, do you use any middleware to ensure accuracy of your HMDA data?
Yes, we use HMDA Relief. Our compliance department runs a report from our LOS. They run it through HMDA Relief. They scrub any issues with that, rerun the report, and then we file our HMDA report.
Was your LOS ready?
For the most part, they were ready. There were a few small issues when they went live, but they handled the implementation pretty well.
What sorts of issues did you encounter?
They had some issues with generating the proper 1003 for a small period of time, but they were really responsive to fixing that issue and got it resolved pretty quickly. So we didn't have any long-term saleability issues with our loans.
What were some of the major HMDA errors in your first quarter?
Well, I would say we had a little bit of everything. I don't know that we had one major error. We had a lot of little ones, if you will. We had data that was not entered in correctly. We had a middleware that we do use, and we needed to sync up our LOS system with what the middleware was calling an error. And obviously we needed to work with our compliance department to get the coding that they understood the CFPB as wanting to have. So it was all of those things that combined into us working quite hard in the first quarter.
So from an LOS perspective, do you think the vendor was ready?
I do. I think the vendor did a good job. It was really, because we make our own rules, it was really on us to make the rules and to apply them correctly to the LOS for our users.
So relative to your LOS, did you apply business rules and automation to ensure that there weren't any HMDA errors?
Oh, I wish we could do that to assure there were no HMDA errors. That would be fabulous. But I think this is something that we struggle with on almost any kind of implementation that we do, like HMDA. Is it better to build a lot of rules to automate as much data as possible, or to start out slow and make sure people are trained? So I took the approach to start very slow with automation, both to make sure that we were kind of settled into our new HMDA routine and to make sure any updates to the system were settled out, so I wasn't writing rules that were then wiped out by the system, updates and things like that. It also gave us the opportunity to sort of start fresh with HMDA training and make sure that everybody who was responsible for individual pieces of the HMDA data really knew what information needed to go in each field and how it should get there. That way, when we have applied rules around it going forward, as we've started to do, especially now that we've been into it for a few months, they really understood what should belong in each field. And so if something went wrong with a rule, as we know it sometimes can, they were able to readily identify that rather than just having an understanding of this is something automated, so whatever's there should be right. And that approach has worked pretty well for us thus far.
Did you feel that the vendor was ready?
I did. I felt like the vendor was as ready as anybody could anticipate a vendor being. Of course, there were bumps along the way, and there have been updates to the vendor system since the 1st of January. It wasn't a set it and forget it deal by any stretch of the imagination, but I felt that they've been very responsive to the needs of their users and have really listened to the community, telling them and giving them feedback as to what's working well and what isn't. So I'm pretty happy with how prepared they were.
So if you're writing business rules, is there any chance that you would impact the reps and warrants you have for compliance for your LOS?
There's certainly always that chance. If there's any sort of a rep and warrant, guarantee, I don't like to use that word, but for lack of a better term, guarantee on the system, anything we do, whether it's HMDA or anything else in the system, could, make that null and void. When we look at it as the vendor is going to do everything they can to interpret the compliance regulations, anything new that they have to input, and put it out how they understand it. Hopefully we all use vendors that have a good compliance team behind them and can understand that. But as individual institutions, we have our own compliance teams, whether they're internal, external, our different varied auditors, and just people who are within the departments doing the day-to-day compliance work. And we all think of things differently. So, we will write business rules to automate information that the vendor hasn't automated or hasn't maybe taken the same approach that we have, but we approach it very cautiously. I have to understand that my LOS vendor programmed things in a certain way because they have a team of compliance professionals who told them that that's how they interpreted the regulation. There's a lot of different ways to interpret regulations. So if my compliance team is coming at me from a different angle, I want to try to understand both sides of it. So I might try to research why the LOS vendor decided to program something in a specific way, bring that to my compliance team, understand their side of it, and see, if I have to write a business rule because my compliance team or my auditors are saying, no, absolutely, this is the way it has to be done, well, then obviously I have to report it that way. But at least I've done some research before I went and wrote business rules, both because I don't want to, overrule my system and conflict with rules that are already built into it, but also so I make sure that I can document exactly why we did everything that we did around automation.
So it sounds like that's your control, and it involves the compliance professionals.
Yes.
And anything else that you have to do? I mean, is it limited to specific resources that would be able to make those changes, or?
Well, yes, in our institution, because we're so small, we have very limited number of admins. We don't have a lot of people in the system making those types of changes. So we're fortunate in a way that we can control things so well. So that mostly funnels through me, and I keep careful documentation of why we made each change. So I always feel it's important to make sure I can document everything, because I don't remember, every change that we get to put into the system. So if my compliance team comes back and says, we think we need to do this a different way, this is our justification why, we have the conversation, and I ask them to send me something, via email or a more official document if it's required, so that I can keep that in a document trail. So especially for something as big as HMDA and all of the changes, for me as an admin and as an operations manager, that's a completely separate set of logs and audit trails for myself, so that I don't integrate it into everything else I'm doing with the system, and I have a really clear understanding of everything that went into how we got to the end of the year. This is our HMDA submission.
Thank you for watching. I hope this helps you and your companies navigate through some of the challenges faced by the industry. Stay on the lookout for a future video from the committee. Have a great day.